Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're going to be doing part one of a two-part series. This is the Southern Tier Overpacked Sampler Pack. I got it in cans. It's a 15 beer case with 3 each of 5 different styles. So for this first part, we're going to be reviewing the New School, which is an IPA. This is 6%. The second one is the 8 Days a Week. This is a blonde ale at 4.8% ABV. And then the final one for part one will be Tangier. This is a session IPA. It is brewed with tangerine peels, which obviously the namesake. This one clocks in at 4.6% ABV. The other 2 beers in the pack that we're going to be reviewing on part 2 are the 2X or 2 times Smash, which is a double IPA, and then the Citra Hopped Live, which is a pale ale. So we'll go ahead and jump right in, starting with the New School IPA. Okay, so the first beer we're going to jump right into is the New School IPA. Again, this is 6% ABV. I'm fairly certain that I've had this at least once, maybe twice in the past, but it's been quite a while. So I'm very excited to get back in and give this a full, proper review and really dig deep into what this beer is about. I have got some good appropriate glassware that will work for all of the beers in this. This actually is glassware from my buddies, Fox and Emerald Brewing, fellow homebrewers, their homebrewing company. Great guys. Shout out to Kyle and Justin. But let's go ahead and get this poured into this great glassware. I will do my best to pour this well. Okay, so far so good. Again, as you all know by now, I am not an expert at pouring beers. I never worked as a bartender or a barback, so it's all trial by fire. And I think I actually got this just right this time. All right, yeah, that is a really lovely looking IPA. You can see it's a very light golden color. So not heavily caramelized malts, no ambers, no carapils or anything like that, insofar as I can tell. Head came out beautifully. This is a classic, perfect IPA head. Really nice, tight, foamy bubbles. It's really holding in there. Looks really nice. Let's see what the nose has in store. Oh, it's a very good smelling IPA. It smells very fresh, very floral, and rather citrusy. So I'm kind of expecting it's going to have maybe some citrusy, more juicy hop notes. Maybe just a hint of earthy bitters in the back. You never really know. The world of hops is so vast. And especially when you're dry hopping, it can bring out a lot of aromas that don't necessarily impart that actual flavor in the beer. So it's always exciting. That's one of the things I love about IPAs is every time you try a new one, you never really know what you're going to get just by smelling it. It's all about the series of operations and what that specific hop profile brings to the character of the beer bill. But let's jump right in. Give it a sip. It's looking good. Head is still holding beautifully. That's a really nice head for an IPA. I'd say that's textbook. Ah, hello, old friend. Yeah, I remember this one. Yeah, this is a very good beer. It's a very good beer indeed. Uh, Again, I'm an admitted hop head. I love IPAs. I cannot get enough hops. I love them. Oh man, I just do. Uh, this is a great IPA. This is the kind of IPA that I go for. It doesn't have a big caramelly character. It doesn't have that kind of toffee or anything that gets in the back like you get with a lot of double IPAs. It lets the hop shine through, which is what I personally believe an IPA should be. I want to taste the hop. I want to taste everything the hop has in store. I want to smell the hop, and I want those lingering bitters. And this is rather exactly what I thought it might be. You do get a nice floral, crisp, citrusy bite up front. But then it absolutely breaks into a nice, earthy, strong bitter, which is just lovely. This is an exceptionally well-balanced IPA. To me, this would be, ranks right up there near IPA perfection. There's not much I could ask for more than this in an IPA. Yeah, that's just delicious. It's got a wonderful mouthfeel, a wonderful body. I would say for an IPA, this is textbook. It's a medium, light medium, the medium heavy, depending on different times when you're rolling it around. Has really nice finish, and it's very linear along the bell curve, kind of how it takes you. You get all that start that you got in the nose. You get the citrus and the floral and just the fresh, bright, and that hits you up front. And then it opens up into this beautiful punch of bitters and finishes off the tail end and kind of separates out again. So you get this nice, long, lingering, earthy bitter that's very big, and you still get that citrusy, bright, floral, fruity that just kind of tapers off. So this is just a really, really good example of what an IPA should be for my money. The aroma is fantastic. The taste is fantastic. The body and mouthfeel are almost textbook IPA for me. The finish, yeah, I could like it being a little longer, but it's very well balanced and it's got a nice flow that it follows. The head was almost perfect. I've still got a nice bit of head in there. It's hanging in, so far so good. And it looks beautiful. I feel really good about this one. I'll give the final rating at the end, but let's go ahead and move on to our second beer. That's the 8 Days a Week Blonde Ale. Okay, so for our next beer, we're moving on to the 8 Days a Week. Again, this is a blonde ale. Clocks in at 4.8% ABV, so a little lower than your average beer that I drink, typically being an IPA and bigger stout and porter man. But nonetheless, let's get this poured in. And I can already see that this beer is aptly in the style of a blonde ale. Indeed, it is an ale, and I would say, overall, more or less, that is blonde. In fact, it looks very similar to the new Skool IPA we just reviewed. Actually, if anything, it's just got a slight hint more amber hue to it. So perhaps some slightly more roasted malts in this one. But it's a lovely looking beer. The head poured almost identical to the last one. This again is going to be your textbook head that you'd expect to see on a blonde ale, just like an IPA. Got a nice foamy head, very tight bubbles, very creamy. That's the operative word. Let's give it a sniff, see what the nose tips us off to in this one. Okay, I'm gonna have to give that just a minute to rest and take a bigger inhale there to see if I can detect more. The aroma is exceedingly subtle. I would say that the nose is almost non-existent on this one. I'm sure that it's there, but maybe just need to give it another minute to settle. I'm going to give it a little slight bit of agitation, see if that helps the cause. That does help the cause, but again, the aroma is very slight. It smells light. It smells slightly floral, and it smells slightly toasty, malty. So I'm not really sure what to anticipate in the flavor profile here, just based on the aroma. Yeah, there's just not much of one. It's very subtle, and I stand by what I said I could detect there. It's exceedingly subtle, so the nose is not particularly big on this. The aroma is underwhelming, but it's a good looking beer, and I'm ready to jump right in. Head still looks good. It's holding tight, still nice and creamy. So let's jump in, see what it's about. That's a nice beer. That's a nice clean beer. For a blonde ale, well, that's a pleasant finish. I didn't expect that. Okay, so this is a very, very light beer. This is a beer that would be good really anytime, any season of the year, but I think that this is one that might be particularly nice, again, on a hot weather day or coming in to get something a little heavier. This is not like the Sam Adams review I did on the last episode. To the extent I would classify it as a hot summer day, you come in from cutting the grass kind of beer, but you easily could. The reason I would say not is because this is quite a bit heavier than the beers that I would kind of put in that category. Like you're really hot, but you still want a beer. You just finished some manual labor in the middle of summer. And the reason is it's actually got a much bigger body than the average summertime beer that I would go for. And it's just a lot silkier. This almost reminds me of a cream ale. It's a blonde ale, but they could almost classify this as a cream ale or a blonde cream ale. It's almost a hybrid. Very, very silky smooth. I mean, just ridiculously silky smooth. This body is so creamy, as is the mouthfeel. Oh, man. Okay, and I'll tell you, the lack of the nose is almost kind of nice because it doesn't tip you off to what you're about to experience. And once you get in it, man, that's a really nice beer. It is. I don't normally go for blonde ales. I'll drink them, and I try new beers all the time. It's not a style that oh, there's a blonde ale, let me grab it though. This is a really good, good blonde ale. I've had many, 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 but I would say this is one of the better ones I've ever had. Southern Tier is one of my favorite brewers. I know everything I've ever had by Southern Tier has been exceptionally well done. This is no exception. This is one I've never had prior, and I'm very pleasantly surprised. The taste is classic blonde ale. It's light. You got a hint of fruitiness, a hint of floral, but it's mostly malty and kind of toasty, bready, kind of malt characteristics. And the way that it blends in with almost kind of a hybrid of a cream ale style, just the whole experience is just wow. And it's got actually a much longer finish than I anticipated. And where it finishes off is an interesting twist because I don't get it on the aroma at all, and I don't get it up front or in the middle. Only on the finish does it finish off with this wonderful 50-50 blend of kind of buttered toast and caramel. That's the finish. And man, it's just a nice example. This is such a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect this. That is a good beer. That is a good beer. I'm very happy right now. Very nice beer. If you're a fan of blonde ales, I would recommend this one. This one is quite a bit different than your average blonde ale. It's got some structure to it. It's got some bones. This is a well thought out malt bill. It's a well thought out balance of hops. Speaking of the hops, just so you know, it's got a subtle earthy. I would say it's even a lighter hop variety than say a British Fuggle hop. Very light, but the characteristic that does come through is earthy bitters, and it's subtle. It's in there so you know you're still enjoying a nice beer. It's been hopped, but it's very subtle. They used a lighter hand. Balance is the name of the game in this beer. This is a great blonde ale. I'm very, very pleased with this one. I highly recommend it. If you're into blonde ales at all, or just lighter craft beer, I would highly recommend this one. You won't be disappointed. I'll get the full rating at the end, but for now, let's move on to the final beer in our part one of our two-part series. This moves on to the Tangier. This is a session IPA, and it is brewed with tangerine peel, so should be a nice citrus-forward IPA, I do expect. Okay, so for our final beer, we're moving on to, I had stated prior, the Tangier Session IPA, but I decided I'm going to put that in the second part two review. So we're going to move on to the Southern Tier 2X Smash. This is a double IPA. I'm going to get this poured into the glass. Let's see if I can get this poured properly. A little more roughly down the middle. Yeah, that'll get the head going. A little jostling. It doesn't take much. Again, I think I've properly got all three of these poured, so that's been a hot minute for me. But nonetheless, you can see this as a double IPA has a nice classic, more amber color to it. This is a style that, as a rule, I don't normally go for. I'm a huge hophead fan, but I find that double and triple and quad IPAs and whatever else they want to throw in, is you throw in more fermentables, it tends to override the hop character that comes through. So in these beers, They're nice and they're big. They're definitely big beers. But for me, once the overwhelming amount of malts comes through, it really starts to overpower the hop characteristic of the beer. So it's not a style I normally go for, and it's not that they're bad. I mean, they're certainly good beers and they're still IPAs, but they just have a completely different characteristic to it than what I normally go for. I like the, excuse me as my lavalier mic falls off, I like the hop to be the kind of star character in any IPA, and not the malts. The malts should play a part, but as an IPA for me, the hops should be front and center. But nonetheless, it's a nice looking beer. It's got a great head on it. Let's give it a sniff. Yeah, this has a classic double IPA smell to me. It smells caramelly. You just get a little bit of fruity floral notes in the nose, but you can definitely smell all the malts in there, and it absolutely smells like roasted caramelly malts and toffee. So I kind of know what I'm going to expect here. I've had this beer before. It's been a while, but we're going to give a Southern Tier's double IPA just another fair shake here. So let's go ahead and have a sip and see what we think. Okay. Now, I'll be honest. Compared to most double IPAs I've had, I would say this is one of the better ones. Exactly what I thought was exactly what presents here. You get slight fruit, slight floral up front. That immediately dissipates to this massive caramelly toffee mouthfeel. It's really delicious. It's very decadent. But that's the overwhelming flavor that comes through. And it's got a nice big body as you'd expect in a double IPA. It's big and thick. It's got a nice thick mouthfeel. It's a heavier beer, no doubt, yeah. Thing that sets the Southern Tier double IPA apart from most of them I've had, though, is that their balance of it is much better than average. While it's big and it's got a big malt bill to boost that ABV up, it doesn't overpower the hops completely. So you do still get a nice hoppy bite at the end, and it really only comes from about the midway point to the end of the beer, and it does have a very long finish. This also, it's got so many fermentables in there, it does have a little bit of a boozy quality. It doesn't taste boozy per se, but that's one of the underlying perceptions I'm getting while experiencing this beer. So overall, kind of a classic double IPA character. It does have the more caramelly, malty, toffee-like stickiness and viscosity you'd expect from that amount of fermentables, but it does have a nice hop bitter bite at the end, and it really only comes from the end of the midway point to the end of the beer, and just a slight floral fruit up front. I would say for a double IPA, this is very well balanced. This is one of the better double IPAs I've had, hands down. Most of them are overwhelming. They did a good job of balancing this out to still make it a double. The hop character in this is an earthy with a slight twinge of pine. So it's a good mix. It reminds me maybe of Simcoes or Magnums mixed with Fuggles or maybe a traditional German noble hop. That's kind of the profile that I'm getting here. I don't know what their hop bill is or their full malt bill, but I would expect it's got some caramel malts, maybe some carapils in there, and a balance of others. And the hops are a good blend. They've done a good job here. Really, as an example of the style, this is one of the better ones. I'd say it ranks very high up there, and I expect that this, as with the prior two, is going to have a very good score at the end of the review. Yeah, that is well balanced for a double IPA. And it does have a really nice finish. It really does kind of take you on a nice bell curve ride and kind of pick out all the different parts that came into making this beer. This is a good one. I'm not the biggest fan of double IPAs, but if I had to pick one, this would be in my top three for sure. We'll get the full rating at the end, and then we'll wrap up part one. And then part two, we will move on and hit the Citra Hop Live, that's the pale ale. And then we will get the Tangier IPA, which is brewed with tangerine peel. So just a slight variation. I was going to do the Tangier in here, but I decided to finish with the big double IPA. And then we'll keep a couple more light beers, lighter, for part two. And we'll see you back here with the full ratings on all of them in just a minute. Okay, so now that we have sampled all three beers here, let's go ahead and get the scores and ratings on them. Starting with the New Skool, this was a classic IPA, 6% ABV. I really enjoyed this beer. I think it has a lot going for it. This is a prototypical type of IPA that I personally go for, so I really enjoyed this. Aroma, it was nice. You knew what you were getting into. It had a really big nose, 8 out of 10 there. The taste, almost perfection, 9 out of 10. The body and the mouthfeel both get an 8. Very intrinsically related, and this was well above average in both categories. The finish was really, really long and lets you experience everything that went into the beer. Again, well above average, 8 out of 10. The head and the retention, this was textbook perfect IPA. I gave it a perfect 10. The appearance and the balance, gave both of those a 9 out of 10, almost perfect. I mean, just a lovely, lovely beer. They did a really great job here. Moving on to the feeling and intangible category, I gave this a perfect score. I really enjoyed this. It was the first time I've had this beer. If I had it in the past, it was so long ago I didn't recall, and I really enjoyed the entire experience. Perfect 10 out of 10 there. Finally, as an example of the style, this was almost IPA perfection. This ranks in one of the top IPAs I could name off the top of my head that I would go to as an everyday drinking IPA. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I recommend it to any fans of IPAs. Final score is an 88 out of 100 on the New Skool. Moving on next, 8 days a week, a blonde ale, 4.8%. As I said, this is not a style I normally go for. But if it's well done, I do enjoy this style, even though I'm a hophead and this was not a hoppy beer. The aroma, to start. This was the one category that just, I was underwhelmed completely. I had a hard time even gauging what I was about to experience in the beer because the nose was so weak. So I gave it a 2 out of 10 in that category. The taste, though, it turns a 180 and redeems itself. I gave that an 8 out of 10. Really, really good beer. The body also gave an 8 out of 10. For a blonde ale, it was even more than I expect from an average blonde ale. It was well above average, 8 out of 10 there. The mouthfeel was even nicer. This was almost textbook perfect blonde ale, just silky smooth, 9 out of 10. The finish was really, really long, especially considering the style. Like, I was really, really surprised. 8 out of 10 there. The head and retention, this was perfect for the style, 10 out of 10. The appearance and the balance and the feeling and intangible, and as an example of the style, all 9s to finish out. This was such a great blonde ale. I was really blown away. I didn't expect to like it as well as I did, and I certainly didn't expect it to bring that much to the table, but wow. Really, really excellent example of a blonde ale. If you like the lighter beers, if you're a blonde ale fan, I highly recommend this one. 81 out of 100 for the total. That brings us into the last beer in our part 1. This is the 2X or 2 times Smash Double or Imperial IPA if you prefer. 8.2% ABV on this one, big beer. As an IPA fan, I don't normally go for the double and triple and quad IPAs. I find once they start adding in that extra volume of malts to get the ABV up, that it overshadows the hops and it ends up making the hop character muted, and really what comes through to me on average is a very caramel heavy flavor profile and not as hop centric. This one is one of the better double or Imperial IPA offerings that I could think of. I've had it before and I wanted to come back and give a real critical review of what it was I thought about it. So top to bottom, aroma, fantastic, 8 out of 10, well above average. Taste, again, 8 out of 10, well above average. I can't think of too many Imperial IPAs where I thought the taste was as good. The body, this was almost perfection for a double IPA, 9 out of 10. The mouthfeel only docked at 1 point comparatively. It was still really nice, well above average, 8 out of 10. The finish wasn't as long as I would expect, but it was still above average, so I gave it a 7 out of 10 there. The head and the retention, this was well above average for a double IPA. Really stuck with it. 8 out of 10 there. The appearance, this was almost perfect double IPA. 9 out of 10. The balance, this was exceptionally well balanced. Again, I keep coming back to this. I compare a standard run-of-the-mill IPA, if you want to term it that, to a double imperial or triple offering, and I don't normally like them as well for all of the reasons I've mentioned repeatedly now, but this was just exceptionally well balanced, and you actually got to enjoy the hops that are the centerpiece of an IPA for my money. So 8 out of 10 there. Feeling in the intangible category, again, 8 out of 10. It's not often that I really enjoy a double IPA, but I really, truly did enjoy this one. 8 out of 10 there. Finally, as an example of the style, I had to give it a 9. Again, I come back to this. As an example of the style, I cannot think of too many that I would go to over this beer because it's so well done. It's such a great representation of this style. It's so well balanced. Everything about it was just a great beer. That brings the final score on this one up to an 82 out of 100. So for part one, a very strong showing by Southern Tier, all well above average ratings. If you're a fan of any of these styles, I do recommend all of them. They were all fantastic. There's much more to come. We got part two coming up, the final two beers in this Overpacked Southern Tier beer review. That will bring us the Tangier IPA. It's a session IPA brewed with tangerine peel, and then also the Citra Hopped Live, which I'm really excited to try. I've never had it. That is a pale ale using Citra hops, obviously. So those should be good beers as well. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something today. I hope you found it at least mildly entertaining. Feel free to share this with the fellow beer lovers in your life. Like and subscribe. You can click the notification bell to stay in the loop when we drop our newest episodes. And we thank you for joining us, and there's much more to come. Until then, as always, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.